Good evening, my dear friends, masters, and gods. My pranams to Ascended Master Mahavatar Babaji. My pranams to Great Grandmaster Brahmarishi Vedamaga Dr. Batriji sir. My pranams to Great Grandmaster Mahavatar Foundation founder Dr. Guruji Ranganathan sir. My pranams to all masters and friends. My pranams to the universe. Friends, I welcome you all to the day 2 of the batch 23 of English Zoom meditation class of Mahavatar Foundation. Today is a special program day. I am going to share a few points on the topics ideal child, ideal parent, and about a brief about concentration. First, I will start with ideal child. An ideal child should always remember the necessity of an absolute sincerity, the certitude of a truth's final victory, the possibility of constant progress with the will to achieve. An ideal child is good tempered and does not become angry when things seem to go against him or decisions are not in his favor. An ideal child is game, whatever he does it to the best of his capacity and keeps on doing in the face of the almost certain failure. He always thinks straight and acts straight. An ideal child is truthful. That is, he never fears to say the truth, whatever may be the consequences. An ideal child is patient. That is, he does not get disheartened if he has to wait a long time to see the results of his efforts. An ideal child is enduring. That is, he faces the inevitable difficulties and sufferings without grumbling. An ideal child is preserving. That is, he never slackens his efforts however long it has to last. An ideal child is poised, that is, he keeps equanimity in success as well as in failure, that is, he is neutral. An ideal child is courageous, that is, he always goes on fighting for the final victory, though he may meet with many defeats. An ideal child is always cheerful, that is, he knows how to smile and keep a happy heart in all circumstances. An ideal child is modest, that is, he does not become conceited over his success, neither does he feel himself superior to his friends and comrades. An ideal child is generous, that is, he appreciates the merit of others and is always ready to help another to succeed. An ideal child is fair and obedient. He observes the discipline and is always honest. Next, I will proceed with about ideal child. There is an ascending evolution in nature which goes from the stone to the plant, from the plant to the animal, and from the animal to the man. Because man is, for the moment, the last rung at the summit of the ascending evolution, he considers himself as the final stage in the ascension and believes there can be nothing on earth superior to him. In that, he is mistaken. In his physical nature, he is almost wholly an animal, a thinking and a speaking animal, but still an animal in his material habits and instincts. Undoubtedly, nature cannot be satisfied with such an imperfect result. The nature endeavors to bring out a being who will be to man what man is to the animal, a being who will remain a man in its external form and yet whose consciousness will rise far above the mental and its slavery to ignorance. The man is only a transitional being living in a mental consciousness, but the possibility of acquiring a new consciousness, the truth consciousness, and capable of living a life perfectly harmonious, good and beautiful, happy and fully conscious. We depend on our will and our sincerity always. If we have the will, no more to belong to ordinary humanity, no more to be merely evolved animals. If our will is to become men of the new race, realizing supramental ideal, living a new and higher life upon a new earth, we will find here all the necessary help to achieve our purpose. We will profit fully and eventually become living examples of the world. Next, I will go to the topic ideal parent. This is first in the ideal parent. I will speak of the true maternity. Maternity is considered as the principal role of women, but this is true only so long as we understand what is meant by the word maternity. For to bring children into the world as rabbits do their young, instinctively, ignorantly, machine like, that certainly cannot be called maternity. True maternity begins with the conscious creation of a being, with the willed shaping of a soul coming to develop and utilize a new body. The true domain of women is the spiritual. We forget it but too often. To bear a child and construct his body almost subconsciously is not enough. The work really commences when, by the power of thought and will, we conceive and create a character capable of manifesting an ideal. And do not say that we have no power of realizing such a thing. Innumerable instances of this very effective power could be brought out as proofs. Next, the glorious works. So, maternity becomes truly precious and sacred. Indeed, with this, we enter the glorious works of the spirit, and womanhood rises above animality and its ordinary instincts towards real humanity and its powers. In this effort, in this attempt, lies our true duty. And if this duty was always of the greatest importance, it certainly has taken a capital one in the present turn of the earth's evolution. Next, the advent of the dawn. All those who feel that their heart extends further than the limits of their own person and family, that their thought embraces more than small personal interest and local conventions, all those, in short, who realize that they belong not to themselves or to their family or even to the country, but to God, who manifests Himself in all countries through mankind, these indeed know that they must rise and set to work for the sake of humanity for the advent of the dawn. And in this momentous, endless, many-sided work, what can be the part of a womanhood? It is true that as soon as great events and works are in question, the custom is to relegate women to a corner with a smile of patronizing contempt, which means this is not our business, poor, feeble, futile creatures. And women, submissive, childlike, lazy, perhaps, have accepted, at least in many countries, this deplorable state of things. In the life of the future, there shall be no more room for such division, such disequilibrium between the masculine and the feminine. The true relation of the two sexes is an equal footing of the mutual help and close collaboration. Next, I will speak of the supreme possibility. And now we come back to our starting point, to our duty of true maternity. For this form meant to manifest the spiritual force capable of transforming the earth's present condition. This new form, who is to construct it if not the women? It is no longer sufficient to form a man similar to the greatest man when we have heard or of or known or even greater, more accomplished and gifted than they. We must strive to come in such mentally by the constant aspiration of our thought and will with the supreme possibility which, exceeding all human measures and features, will give birth to the Superman. Next, the future man. First of all, we must be careful in our attempt to conceive the future man or superman, not to adopt an actual type of man, perfecting or aggrandizing him, the new age. Therefore, the individuals who will most help the future of humility in the new age will be those who will recognize a spiritual evolution as the destiny and therefore the great need of human being, an evolution or conversion of the present type of humanity into a spiritualized humanity, even as the animal man has been largely converted into a highly mentalized humanity, the new race. And among those individuals, women must be the first to realize this great change, as it is then their special task to give birth in this world to the first specimens of the new race, the supreme reward. Thus, the individual, no more guided by egotistical motives, laws, or customs, shall abandon all selfish aims. His rule will be perfect disinterestedness to act in a view of a personal profit, either in this world or in another beyond, will become an unthinkable impossibility. For each act will be done in complete, simple, joyful obedience to the God's law, that is divine's law, which inspires it without any seeking for reward or results, as a supreme reward will be in the very delight of acting under such inspiration, of being identified in conscience and will with the divine principle within oneself. Next, I will speak out To educate a child is to educate oneself. That is, the education of a human being should begin at birth and continue throughout his life. Indeed, if we want this education to have its maximum result, it should begin even before birth. There are other parents who know that their children must be educated and try to do what they can. But very few, even among those who are most serious and sincere, know that the first thing to do in order to be able to educate a child is to educate oneself, to become conscious and master of oneself, so that one never sets a bad example to one child. For it is above all through example that education becomes effective. To speak good words and to give wise advice to a child has very little effect if one does not oneself give him an example of one teaches sincerity, honesty, straightforwardness, courage, interestedness, unselfishness, passions, endurance, perseverance, peace, calm, self control are all things that are taught infinitely better by example than by beautiful speeches. Parents have a high ideal and always act in accordance with it, and we will see that little by little our child will reflect this ideal in himself and spontaneously manifest the quality we would like to see expressed in his nature. Quite naturally, a child has respect and admiration for his parents. Unless they are quite unworthy, they will always appear to a child as demigods whom he will try to imitate as best he can. It is always good to tell the truth. With very few exceptions, parents are not aware of the disastrous influence that their own defects, impulses, weaknesses, and lack of self-control have on the children. If you wish to be respected by a child, have respect for yourself and be worthy of respect at every moment. Never be unauthoritarian, despotic, impatient, or ill-tempered. When our child asks us a question, do not give him a stupid or silly answer under the pretext that the child cannot understand us. We can always make ourselves understood if we take enough trouble, and in spite of the popular saying that it is not always good to tell the truth, we affirm that it is always good to tell the truth, but that the art consists in telling it in such a way as to make it accessible to the mind of the hearer. In early life, until the child is 12 or 14 years, the child's mind is hardly open to abstract notions and general ideas. And yet, we can train it to understand these things by using concrete images, symbols, or parables. Up to quite an advanced age, and for some who mentally always remain children, a narrative, a story, a tale well told teach much more than any number of theoretical explanations. Next, I will speak of the education of the body. All education of the body should begin at birth and continue throughout our life. It is never too soon to begin nor too late to continue. Physical education has three principal aspects. Control, number one, control and discipline of the functioning of the body. Number two, an integral, methodical and harmonious development of all the parts and movements of the body. And number three, correction of any defects and deformities. As soon as the child is able to make use of his limbs, some time should be devoted every day to the methodical and regular development of all the parts of his body. Every day, some 20 or 30 minutes, preferably on walking, on waking, if possible, will be enough to ensure the proper functioning and balanced growth of his muscles while preventing any stiffening of the joints and of the spine, which occurs much sooner than one thinks. Next, good habit. It may be said that from the very first days, even the first hours of his life, the child should undergo the first part of the program as far as food, sleep, evacuation, etc. are concerned. If the child from the very beginning of his existence learns good habits, it will save him a good deal of trouble and inconvenience for the rest of his life. And besides, those who have the responsibility of caring for him during his first years will find their task very much easier. Next, food. One must educate the child with care and teach him to distinguish his desires from his needs. He should be developed to develop a taste for food that is simple and healthy, substantial and appetizing, but free from any useless complications. In his daily food, all that merely stuffs and causes heaviness should be avoided. And above all, the child must be taught to eat according to his hunger, neither more nor less, and not to make his meals on an occasion to satisfy his greed or gluttony. From one's very childhood, one should know that one eats in order to give strength and health to the body and not to enjoy the pleasures of the palate. Cleanliness. Another thing should be taught to a child from his early years to enjoy cleanliness and observe hygienic habits. But in obtaining this cleanliness and respect for the rules of hygiene from the child, one must take great care not to instill into him the fear of illness. Fear is the worst instrument of education and the surest way of attracting what is feared. Yet, while there should be no fear of illness, there should be no inclination for it either. Next, sleep. In any case, a child, whatever his activities, should have sufficient number of hours of sleep. The number will vary according to his age. In the cradle, the baby should sleep longer than he remains awake. The number of hours of sleep will diminish as the child grows. But until maturity, it should not be less than 8 hours in a quiet, ventilated place. The child should never be made to stay up late for no reason. Scolding. We should not scold our child without good reason and only when it is quite indispensable. A child who is often scolded gets hardened to rebuke and no longer attaches much importance to words or severity of a tone. And above all, we should take good care never to scold them for a fault which ourselves commit. Children are very keen and clear sighted observers. They soon find out our weakness and note them without pity. When a child has done something wrong, we see that he confesses it to us spontaneously and frankly. And when he has confessed with kindness and affection, make him understand what was wrong in his movement so that he will not repeat. The child won't repeat, but never scold them. A fault confessed, but always be forgiven. Next, not to allow any fear. We should not allow any fear to come between us and our child. Fear is a pernicious means of education. It invariably gives birth to deceit and lying. Next, a child should be taught to aspire for beauty. It is said that from a young age, children should be taught to respect good health, physical strength, and balance. The great importance of beauty must also be emphasized. A young child should aspire for beauty not for the sake of pleasure others or winning their admiration, but for the love of beauty itself. For beauty is the ideal which all physical life must realize. Every human being has the possibility of establishing harmony among the different parts of his body and in the various movements of the body in action. Next, medicine. By the advice is that medicine should not be used unless it is absolutely impossible to avoid them. And this absolutely impossible should be very strict care of the child. The worst of all is to leave the children with servants. It is a crime for these people have an altogether vulgar consciousness, altogether low, altogether obscure, and quite spontaneously, without wanting to do so, they let it enter the children. Next, the essentially, the only thing we should do assiduously is to teach them to know themselves and to choose their destiny, the path they will follow, to teach them to look at themselves, understand themselves, and to will what they want to be. Next, last, to learn is the most precious gift that one can make to a child, to learn always and everywhere. With this, I completed the ideal child and ideal parent. Next, I will speak of the about concentration. A brief about concentration. What is yogic concentration? Concentration is a gathering together of the consciousness and either centralizing at one point or turning on a single object. That is the divine. Example divine. There can also be a gathered condition throughout the whole being, not at a point. Ordinarily, the consciousness is spread out everywhere, dispersed, running in this or that direction. After this subject and that object is multitude. When anything has to be done of a sustained nature, the first thing one does is to draw back all this dispersed consciousness and concentrate. It is then, if one looks closely, bound to be concentrated in one place and on one occupation, subject or object. As when you are composing a poem or a botanist is studying a flower, the place is usually somewhere in the brain, if it is a thought, in the heart, if it is a feeling in which one is concentrated. The yogic concentration is simply an extension and intensification of the same thing. It may be an object, as one does tatak on a shining point, then one has to concentrate so that one sees only that point and has no other thought than that. It may be on an idea or word or a name, the idea of the divine, the word Om, the name Krishna, or a combination of idea and word or idea and name. But further in yoga, one also concentrates in a particular place. There is the famous rule of concentrating between the eyebrows, the center of the inner mind of occult vision. If the will is there, what we do is to think firmly from there on whatever we make the object of our concentration, or else try to see the image of it from there. If we succeed in this, then after a time we feel that our whole consciousness is centered there in that place, of course, for the time being. After doing it for some time and often, it becomes easy and normal. Well, we do the same, but not necessarily at that particular spot between the eyebrows. But anyway, anywhere in the head or at the center of the chest where the physiologists are fixed to the cardiac center. Instead of concentrating on an object, we concentrate in the head in a will, a call for the descent of the peace above, or as some do, an opening of the unseen lid and an ascent of the consciousness above. In the heart center, one concentrates in an aspiration for an opening for the presence of living image of the divine there, or whatever else is the object. There may be a japa of a name, but if so, there must also be a concentration on it, and the name must repeat itself there in the heart center. It may be asked, what becomes of the rest of the consciousness when there is local concentration? Well, it either falls silent as in any concentration, or if does not, then thoughts or other things may move out as if outside, but the concentrated part does not attend to them nor notice. That is when the concentration is reasonably successful. One has not to fatigue oneself at first by long concentration if one is not accustomed, for then, in a jaded mind, it loses its power and value. One can relax and meditate instead of concentrating. It is only as the concentration becomes normal, then one can go for on a longer and longer time. Next, two purposes of concentration. Concentration is necessary first to turn the whole will and mind from the discursive deviation natural to them, following a dispersed movement of the thoughts running after many branches desires, led away in the track of the senses and the outward mental response to phenomena. We have to fix the will and the thought on the eternal and real behind all these demands and immense effort a one-pointed concentration. Secondly, it is necessary in order to break down the wheel which is erected by our ordinary mentality between ourselves and the truth. For outer knowledge can be picked up by the way by ordinary attention and reception, but the inner, hidden, and higher truth can only be seized by an absolute concentration of the mind on its object, an absolute concentration of the will to attain it, and once attained, to hold it habitually and securely, unite oneself with it. For identification is the condition of the complete knowledge and possession. It is the intense result of the habitual purified reflecting on the reality and an entire concentration on it. It is necessary in order to break down entirely the division and separation of ourselves from the divine being and the eternal reality, which is the normal condition of our unregenerated, ignorant mentality. Concentration's prime importance. To change the nature is not easy and always takes time. But if there is inner experience, no gradual emergence of the other pure consciousness that is concealed by all these things we know, see, it would be almost impossible even for the strongest will. We say that first we must get rid of all these things, then we have the inner experiences. And these things, anger, jealousy, desire, are the very stuff of the ordinary human vital consciousness. They could not be changed if there were not a deeper consciousness within, which is of quite another character. There is within us a psychic being which is divine, pure of all these defects. It is covered and concealed by the ordinary consciousness and nature. But when it is unveiled and able to come forward and govern the being, then it changes the ordinary consciousness, throws all these undivine things out, and changes the outer nature altogether. That is why we want the sadhaks to concentrate to open this concealed consciousness. It is by concentration of whatever kind and the experience it brings that one opens and becomes aware within, and the new consciousness and nature begin to grow and come out. Of course, we want them also to use their will and reject the desires and wrong movements of the vital, for by doing that the emergence of the true consciousness becomes possible. But rejection alone cannot succeed. It is by rejection and by inner experience and growth it is done. And next, I will speak of the difference between concentration and meditation. Concentration means fixing the consciousness in one place or on one object and in a single condition. Meditation can be diffusive. Example, thinking about the divine, receiving impressions and discriminating, watching what goes on in the nature and acting upon it, etc. In meditation, it is not indispensable to gather like this. One can simply remain with a quiet mind, thinking of one subject or observing what comes in the consciousness and dealing with it. Concentration, when the consciousness is fixed in a particular state, example peace, or movement, example aspiration. Meditation is when the inner mind is looking at the things to get the right knowledge. Meditation is a process leading towards knowledge, and through knowledge, it is a thing of the head and not of the heart. Concentration in the heart is not meditation, it is a call on the divine, on the beloved. Meditation is a purely mental activity. It interests only the mental being. One can concentrate while meditating, but this is a mental concentration. One can get a silence, but it is a purely mental silence, and the other parts of the being are kept immobile and inactive so as not to disturb the meditation. We may pass 20 hours of the day in meditation, and for remaining 4 hours, we will be an altogether ordinary man because only the mind has been occupied. The rest of the being, the vital and the physical, is kept under pressure so that it may not disturb. In meditation, nothing is directly done for the other parts of the being. Concentration is a more active state. We may concentrate mentally, we may concentrate vitally, physically, psychically, and we may concentrate integrally. Concentration or the capacity to gather oneself at one point is more difficult than meditation. We may gather together one portion of our being or consciousness, or we may gather together the whole of our consciousness or even fragments of it. That is, the concentration may be partial, total, or integral, and in each case, the result will be different. If we have the capacity to concentrate, our meditation will be more interesting and easier. That is, once again, I repeat, if we have the capacity to concentrate, our meditation will be more interesting and easier. But one can meditate without concentrating. Some I give a few guidance for concentration. Concentration. The sitting motionless posture is the natural posture for concentrated meditation. Walking and standing are active conditions. It is only when one has gained the enduring rest and passivity of the consciousness that is easy to concentrate and receive when walking or doing anything. A fundamental passive condition of the consciousness gathered into itself is a proper poise of concentration, and a seated gathered immobility in the body is the best position for that. It can be done also lying down, but that position is too passive, tending to be inert rather than gathered. This is the reason why yogis always sit in an asana. One can accustom oneself to meditate walking, standing, lying, but sitting is the first natural position. In the beginning, for a long time, concentration is necessary even by effort because the nature, the consciousness are not ready. Even when the more quiet and natural the concentration, the better. But when the consciousness are and nature are ready, then concentration must become spontaneous and easily possible without effort at all times. Even at last, it becomes the natural and permanent condition of the being. It is then no longer concentration, but the settled poise of the soul is the divine. We must dismiss the fear of the concentration. The emptiness we feel coming on us is the silence of the great peace in which we become aware of ourselves, not as a small ego shut up in the body, but as a spiritual self wide as the universe. Consciousness is not dissolved. It is the limits of consciousness that are dissolved. In that silence, thoughts may cease for a time. There may be nothing but a great limitless freedom and wideness. But into that silence, that empty wideness descends the vast peace from above, light, bliss, knowledge, and the higher consciousness in which we feel the oneness of the divine. It is the beginning of the transformation, and there is nothing in it to fear. Most people associate consciousness with the brain or mind because that is the center of for intellectual thought and mental vision. But consciousness is not limited to that kind of thought or vision. It is everywhere in the system, and there are several centers of it. Example, the center for inner concentration is not in the brain but in the heart. The originating center of vital desire is still lower down. And lastly, I will speak where to concentrate. One can concentrate in any of three centers, which is easiest to the sadak or gives a most result. The power of the concentrate is the heart center is to open the center, and by the power of aspiration, love, bhakti, surrender, remove the veil which covers and conceals the soul and bring forward the soul or psychic being to govern the mind, life, and body, and turn and open them all fully to the divine, removing all that is opposed to that turning and opening. The power of concentration in the eyebrows is to open the center there, liberate the inner mind and vision and the inner or yogic consciousness and its experiences and powers. From here also one can open upwards and act also in the lower centers. But the danger of this process is that one may get shut up into one's mental spiritual formations and not come out of them into the pre and integral spiritual experience and knowledge and integral change of the being nature. The power of concentration above the head is to bring peace, silence, liberation from the body, sense, the identification with the mind and life, and open the way for the lower, that is mental, vital, physical consciousness to rise up to meet the higher consciousness above, and for the powers of higher spiritual nature consciousness to descend into mind, life, and body. This is what is called in this yoga the spiritual transformation. If one begins with this movement, then the power from above as in its descent to open all centers, including the lower center, and bring about the psychic being. For until that is done, there is likely to be much difficulty and struggle of the lower consciousness, obstructing, mixing with, or even refusing the divine action from the above. If the psychic being is once active, this struggle of these difficulties can greatly minimize. The concentration in the heart and the concentration in the head can be both used, each as his own result. The first one opens his psychic being and brings bhakti, love, and union with the God. The other opens the mind to self-realization, to the consciousness of what is above mind, to ascent of the consciousness into the body. There is no harm in concentrating sometimes in the heart and sometimes above the head. But concentration in either place does not mean keeping the attention fixed on a particular spot. We have to take our station of consciousness in either place. If one concentrates on a thought or a word, one has to dwell on the essential idea contained in the word with the aspiration to feel the thing which it expresses. This with this, I close a brief about the concentration. I have spoken today with you friends topic about the ideal child, ideal parent, and a brief about concentration. I thanks everyone for their passion hearing. I thank Master Thiru Logeshwar for giving me this opportunity. I thank our Guruji, Dr. Thiru Ranganathan Sir, founder Mahavatar Foundation, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir.